Could I have your knitting basket, please?
Wait. Now just suppose we sue you.
I love this. I love this intensity over the knitting basket. This is just like when Ned and I fly on planes. People always ask us to get up and empty our knitting basket, and then when they start asking questions, we never know what story to tell. Hi, my name is Mark and welcome to the channel. Today I'm sitting down to do something a little bit different. I want to sit down and share something that I really enjoy with you, and that is a recent episode I watched of Murder, She Wrote. Now, before you run away, it's knitting related. So we're going to break down part of this episode, talk about the project that I've got on the needles, and talk a little bit about some of the questions I get all the time about knitting while flying. So if you're interested in spending a little bit of time with me, then stick around and let's get into it. In my last episode, someone left a comment and said there's always too much chatter before I get to the point. Now, I feel like the point often is the chatter, but if you're in that camp and you think there's too much chatter, I'll jump to the sweater first. So if you were with me in the last couple of episodes, you will have seen a project that I've just started, and that is the New Me sweater. So this is the New Me sweater. I'll put the pattern up on the screen as well. It's a colorwork sweater, sort of Fair Isle inspired. You have a lot of colors at the top, never more than 2 colors in one row. And then once you get a little further down the yoke, we get a larger pattern. It's like this floral all over pattern. And in hindsight, I might have flipped my color dominance to make the petals of the flowers more dominant, but I didn't. And I don't want to flip it now because I think it'll look crazy. So I think when you look at it from a distance, you see these sort of flowers going on. And let me secure my needle. I don't want stitches running away. We'll see if you can see any of it when I hold it up. I think it still kind of looks like the flowers at the bottom. So I have a good start on this. I started it a week and a half ago, and I was really excited to work through the top portion with all of these colors. Megan, of course, helped me pick all of my colors, and I'm so grateful for friends who are good at color theory and can just look at a wall of options and immediately grab things that will work well together and won't fight. Now, of course, oftentimes colors and different colorways from companies are meant to go together. They're meant to play well. But still, when you have a lot of options in front of you and you need to narrow it down to 2 colors for a 2-color color work, or 3 or 4 colors, or in this case, I think I needed 10 colors, it's overwhelming for me, and I have a lot of doubts about, did I choose the right thing? Am I going to like how it works up? So Megan, you're a rock star. I'm super grateful for all of the help you give me in choosing these colors. So at the top, you'll see our colors together. And I think they're beautiful. Some of the shifts are more subtle, and I followed pretty closely kind of the gist of the colors from the pattern example. So you have a light and a dark, a light and a dark. Here there's a little bit more contrast, and then it works down into our flower pattern. And initially, when I introduced this pattern and talked about the colors I was going to use, I said I was going to use this brighter yellow as the flower color. And it was, once I started the sweater, looked at it with Megan, we both decided, for me and for how often I want to wear this sweater, that this color here, this autumn heather, made a little bit more sense as the body color over the brighter golden yellow. And I'll also say, in that video I said something like, oh, this bright yellow is out of my comfort zone, I can't imagine myself wearing it, and several of you rightly pointed out that my bee's knees cardigan is bright yellow. It's it's like the solid bright yellow from Scout of Kelburn Woolens. But yes, I have a whole sweater like that. Other people said, I don't see it on the shelves behind you. I keep it in a different drawer because it's such a big sweater. It doesn't really fold up neatly on the shelf. It kind of spills over. So sometimes I forget about it. So my apologies. Thank you for being on it. So I wanted to show this first for anyone who likes me to get to the point. So here's the update on the sweater. I'm really, really happy with all of the colors up top. I'm happy with how the flowers are working out. I'm in the slower part of the sweater now that I'm in the body and I have a lot of flowers, a lot of charts to repeat, but it's really enjoyable. So that's that. Hopefully I'll get some good work done on it this week and next, and then maybe it'll be finished. But at this point, it's not really cold enough to be wearing sweaters every day where I am in Cleveland, Ohio. It snowed yesterday. Today it's in the mid 60s. So I'm losing some of my sweater wearing opportunity. So less of a rush to get it finished so that I can wear it, but I want to stay focused. I want to give myself the same kind of goals so that I finish it, work on it consistently, and then I can enjoy it next season. So that's first the update on the sweater. Now to pivot to Murder, She Wrote. So I have this somewhat imaginary beef with Angela Lansbury, and Megan and Ned, other loved ones in my lives, have told me, be very careful with what you say because people love Angela Lansbury. And I love Angela Lansbury. May she rest in peace. I'm a big musical theater fan. I know her from her musicals. Of course, I grew up with Beauty and the Beast, and so I know her from Beauty and the Beast. And I think as a kid, when I knew about Murder, She Wrote, maybe my sister, Becky, would make jokes about Murder, She Wrote because when I was growing up, well, I guess I wasn't alive when the show was coming out, but as a kid, it wasn't a show that kids would watch. Of course, murder, but even the style of it, it's like something your parents watch or maybe your grandparents watch. So for years, it was like the punchline, Angela Lansbury and Murder, She Wrote.
Mrs. Fletcher, you must return to your seat. We're in a line to
Scotland
land.
Yard. Yes, Inspector Crimmins, please. It's urgent. Please, Fred, this is vitally important.
A couple of months ago, Ned said, let's just watch an episode. He had seen it. He's a big Angela Lansbury stan. And so he said, I just want to show you the first episode to see how you like it. And I love mysteries. I love Agatha Christie. I love watching a lot of detective series. I don't watch anything gory or intense. So like I can't do Law and Order. I can't do sort of the modern police crime mystery shows. The ones I watch are things like Poirot, Father Brown. I'm watching the British, more gentle, sort of like happy-go-lucky murder mystery shows. So that's my speed. So this works out pretty well. Sometimes an episode of Murder, She Wrote gets a little bit too spooky for me because I just get so scared of everything. But typically, it's my speed. And I think the episodes are really well written. So we watched the first episode together and I was sold. Immediately, I was sold from the intro music. I can't tell you how often Ned and I sing the intro song to each other. We sing all the parts. We start as the piano, we become the strings, we become all the different instruments in the orchestra as we like belt this across the house to each other. So the intro had me sold. After that, I'm a big fan of the intro sequence that every episode starts with the little flash of what you're going to see. It almost gives away the biggest parts of the story. I don't know if that's like a soap opera style thing or what it comes from, but I also think it's fun and nostalgic.
I don't suppose you'd be interested in selling.
You're joking.
I'm not a screenwriter.
Writing is writing. I'll even squeeze you in as an investor.
This is Jessica Fletcher. I'm about 5,000 feet over London. Would you listen carefully? Time is precious.
The next thing I immediately loved is the general use of like a transatlantic accent. Now, Angela Lansbury is British and she did a lot of work in America or a lot of work playing Americans. So she has a great American accent. And in Murder, She Wrote, she is living in Maine. And the people in this small town, Cabot Cove in Maine, most have like Maine accents. And some of that, I don't know, some of it sounds British sometimes, some of it sounds like a New England, like Boston accent. There's all sorts of things, and I feel like among the cast, it's not consistent. And I'm sure at the time when you're coming on to do a guest spot or a small role on an unknown show, maybe the amount of preparation you put in is different. If people knew that the show was going to be on for years and years and years and have this huge following, then maybe, I don't know, you work more on the accent. So there's a lot of interesting accent work in the show. Some of it, that transatlantic accent. Here's a little example.
If I may be of any service.
Be sure the food's hot and the drinks are cold. We'll get along famously.
Of course.
Be sure the food's hot and the drinks are cold and we'll get along fabulously. Things like that. This lady is a star. She's not a resident of Maine, but we get it through all of the accents. So anyway, that's another point I'm excited about, is all of the accents, everything we have going on there. So why am I sharing all of this with you here on my knitting channel? Here's the reason. I'm sitting, minding my own business, knitting away, watching Murder, She Wrote, just winding down for the evening, when all of a sudden, boom, right there on screen, we get our knitting focus. Oh my god, I love it. So first of all, the music, the build up to her knitting. That's what I want every time I whip out my knitting, someone to play the music for me. And then you just have the needles like stabbed in it to show that it's really knitting.
Ma'am, may I store that above you?
No, it's my knitting.
She's a knitter.
Oh my gosh, her response, she's so startled. No, it's my knitting. That's how I feel when anybody passes by. Do you want me to store that? No, it's my knitting. I love it. And then she starts knitting, and it's not enough for us to tell if she's really knitting, but it does look like a realistic start, like she's holding the needles and kind of going into a stitch. I can't exactly tell, and I don't know if we get to see her knitting later, but we'll find out. A quick aside is to point out that Angela Lansbury's neighbor is wild. He's all over her, he's exhausting, like before the plane even takes off. And that reminds me of several situations I've had where you're on the plane, especially if you have your knitting or your crochet, and people are very interested. And so it's nice, I think, to get positive, kind, polite interest, but when it goes further, and I had a situation where somebody was holding my yarn and like pulling the yarn out and rubbing the project over and over, and I had to ask, like, oh, do you mind not doing that? And they just kept doing it. So Angela is me. She's having that experience here.
Are you anybody?
I'm a writer.
A writer? I'll make a deal with your agent when we get the fog town. Don't ask me what's wrong, because everything is wrong. We need more action, more explosions.
Fortunately, our knitter is traveling with her husband, so nobody's bothering her. She just gets to knit, and she can be as panicked about people taking her knitting as she wants.
Be careful. Don't you tell me to be careful. It was your idea. I never should have let you and Bert get me into this.
So this definitely seems sketchy. She's sitting, the knitting almost topples, and the husband is like, be careful, be careful. So clearly something's going on. It's nice in these episodes, they make several people look suspect. So obviously we're considering her as a suspect in whatever's going on, because she's freaking out about her knitting basket. And she also brought like the biggest basket known to man, which wouldn't fly today, but I guess this is a different time. You can do different things on the plane. You can still knit on a plane now, but your knitting has to go in a normal bag that can fit under the seat in front of you. She's got this huge basket, like toppling out with stuff.
Here he comes.
Just act natural. That's what I do when I knit on a plane. I just act natural. I don't want people to think that I'm up to something. I don't want them to take my knitting away. Just act natural. I will say here, when I was watching this, I was excited about the knitting, especially knitting on a plane. It's one of my favorite things to do. And then she starts talking, and I'm like, I know this lady. And I don't know if you could already tell from listening to her voice, but it's Mrs. Puff from SpongeBob.
Hello. What's the first thing you do?
So I thought that was another fun connection in case you noticed that. Man, so at this point in the episode, a murder has taken place. I won't spoil anything in case you want to go watch this episode. Again, it's season 3, episode 12. And this lady is so concerned. She's so shifty about her knitting basket. And I don't want to spoil anything, whether she did it or not, but, you know, just relax, act calm.
And don't you go anywhere.
All right, here's our big moment. We're finally going to see what's going on with the knitting basket. Okay, she's actually knitting. It's a little fiddly. She's knitting English style. She's throwing the yarn and she has it tensioned like between 2 fingers, and she goes into the stitch and then kind of fumbles to get it around, but she's knitting. Well done, Mrs. Puff.
We heard you had your suspect.
Yeah.
How long are you going to spend in England?
On
Of our
business.
vacation.
This is just like when Ned and I fly on planes. People always ask us to get up and empty our knitting basket, and then when they start asking questions, we never know what story to tell.
Could I have your knitting basket, please?
Wait. Now just suppose we sue you.
I love this. I love this intensity over the knitting basket. So as a knitter, sometimes I feel, and I've said this before, sometimes I feel a little bit, I don't know, like a loser. I'm not a loser. I don't think people who knit are losers, but maybe you know what I mean. A lot of people don't think of knitting as like the cool activity to do, especially if you're a kid, if you're a young person, and you know, everybody's doing their own thing. People are going out, people are partying, people are going to the club, and you're like, no, I'm gonna stay home and knit. People can make fun. I don't think people really make fun nowadays, but when I was growing up, it definitely felt like something that you would be embarrassed about, which is a shame. So anyway, when I see knitting represented in like mainstream media, I get so excited, especially if they're actually doing it in a legitimate way. When you see those commercials and people are crocheting and it's knitted work and they're like stabbing it with a crochet hook, or vice versa, if they're supposed to be knitting and they're like using a crochet hook and just again stabbing at a machine-made blanket, it's like, was there nobody to ask about how we should do this? So when I see it done in a legitimate way, like, oh, she's traveling with her knitting because that is a nice thing to do on a long flight, and then she actually knits a couple of stitches. Again, that's nice. They're not like making a mockery of it. They actually know what they're doing here. So I always get excited when anyone mentions knitting. Like there's a line in The Parent Trap where Meredith says something like,
and what am I supposed to do for 3 days? Sit home and knit?
and every time I see that, I'm like, yes, what a joy to sit home for the weekend and knit. And then I think I was watching Gilmore Girls recently, and there's another line. I don't remember who says it, but I'll try to put it in here.
No, forget it. I don't want to get in the way of your big night. I hear there's going to be some hot knitting going on later. Fine, I'll study with you.
I love stuff like that. It makes me happy because I'm always sitting with my knitting while I watch. And if I'm with friends who don't knit, I can be like, oh, look, knitting. Anyway, I love this intensity about the knitting basket. So here we go.
Sorry, Bert. We couldn't help it.
You see, we were told it's against the law to bring a dog into England unless he's quarantined there for 6 months.
You were told correctly.
And there you have it. So essentially they were trying to take like their cat through to another country. What a good diversion. Definitely spooky, made them seem really suspect throughout, but it's, well, they're still trying to break a law. Anyway, they're not murderers. Scout would love to be inside a knitting bag for a flight. He loves yarn, so he would be in heaven. He'd be like chewing that yarn to pieces, and he'd get to hang out with us because he's pretty clingy, right? Right. So I think that's the end of the knitting focus in this episode. It's just the dog bundled under the knitting, which I feel like the dog would have made noise. It would have moved too much. I know. It's TV. It's not real. And then Angela Lansbury is a saint. She turns a blind eye and she's like, you know what? I'm not going to say anything if you want to take your dog to another country without quarantining it. No comment there, but Angela doesn't get involved. Not her business. So maybe you're watching this with me, you're watching Mrs. Puff knit on a plane to disguise her dog, and inspiration strikes, and you think, I want to knit on a plane. I want to hide my dog under my knitting. Whatever it might be, perhaps today's sponsor, Skillshare, can help. Skillshare is the largest online community for creatives with a huge range of creative topics. There are things like knitting, crochet, sewing, and then things outside of that like photography, journaling, cooking, all sorts. It's kind of endless, the topics you can explore for these curated classes. Now, a recent class that I've explored is about travel journaling. This class is from Peggy Dean, and it's called Travel Journaling, Capture Memories on the Go. And if you've been here before, if you know me, I travel pretty often, like almost half the time I'm not home, I'm somewhere else, usually for work, sometimes for vacation, and I try to do my best to capture memories on those trips, whether it's through pictures, maybe filming for a YouTube episode, but I'm not very good at journaling. And I want to make sure that I can look back on some of these milestone moments of my life and remember, be brought back to those moments. So this class helps explore how to combine all of those memories, whether it's your pictures, your videos, maybe mementos that you pick up along the way, and join them into an actual tangible journal. Something I appreciate about all of the Skillshare classes I've taken is that they are project-based. You're not just sitting, taking notes, learning about a skill, you're doing it. So you're given the tools to get started with whatever the new skill or new craft might be. I also appreciate that Skillshare chooses to work with someone like me, someone with an emerging YouTube channel where we talk about a lot of different creative topics. So if you like spending time with me here, if you like learning new skills and branching outside of whatever your main focus is, then maybe Skillshare is something that would benefit you. The first 500 people to use my link in the description box will get a 1-month free trial to Skillshare. So if you're interested in learning any of these new skills, you can get started today. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm really relieved that Mrs. Puff was not part of the crime going on in that episode of Murder, She Wrote. I don't want knitters to have a bad reputation. I want us to be the cool people. I want knitting to be the cool thing to do. And oftentimes with this channel, that's like a focus in the back of my mind that I'm not a young person anymore, but I'm decently young. I'm approaching middle age, I guess. I'm in my early 30s. So as a young-ish person, with my knitting in public, with putting this out on YouTube, sometimes a video gets a lot of views and I get engagement from people all over the world, which always blows my mind. And I always think how great that maybe someone who doesn't already knit or crochet or enjoy fiber arts is stumbling upon this video and then getting the inspiration to start, because I think it is a cool thing to do. I think it has so many benefits. I mean, there have been studies done on what it does for your brain, what it does for your hands, what it does for your mind. And it has a lot of meditative, restorative, helpful qualities, helpful features, things that do contribute to a better you. And before I wrap things up, I want to do a little refresh on flying and knitting, at least within the United States, if you're flying domestic, TSA's regulations. So I have a couple videos about this that you can go watch if you want more details, more chatter. But currently, if you're flying through the United States and going through a TSA checkpoint, you are allowed to bring knitting needles, stainless steel, aluminum, bamboo, it doesn't matter, at least it says it doesn't matter, and you are allowed to bring small scissors, darning needles, crochet hooks, and these things are listed on TSA's website, so you can follow the link, you can double check just to make sure that's still current if you're nervous about flying with your knitting or your crochet. Now I will say, and I'm sure people watching who've had bad experiences are also saying this, it always depends on your actual TSA agent. If somebody thinks something is suspect, if they don't recognize it as a crafting tool, if they're having a bad day, like you never know, they can take it away and there's really nothing you can do. So it's not foolproof, but I'll say I fly every other week and I've never had anything taken in the United States. So if I'm flying on a domestic flight, I take my knitting needles. I have 2 or 3 sets in my carry-on. I always have scissors in my carry-on. I keep a backup project of some sort in my checked baggage, just in case things get taken away from me. And I also have barber cord. I have Stitch Saver, that silicone tube, on hand in case somebody did want to take just the needles. If I had this project, which I will have in my suitcase tomorrow when I fly, if they were to say, oh, you can't take this on the plane, then I would say, can you give me a minute? I'll get out of line. I would put all of the stitches on barber cord. I would slip them off and I'd give them the needles because I don't want the wool and all of these hours of progress to be taken away. So that would be my worst case scenario. If they want to take something away, I would pull the needles out of the project. If I didn't have barber cord or Stitch Saver, I would just pull the needles out and I would rescue the stitches or pull back a couple of rows to get on track later. Because this is, as I said, a week and a half, almost 2 weeks worth of work. I don't want that to go away. That would hurt more than losing my $12 set of needles. So that's that. I pack things up so that they are recognizable. I'm not trying to conceal them. I make sure if I have needles, they're already in a project, because if somebody were to look in your bag or inspect, this looks like knitting. If I just had a bunch of needle tips by themselves with no yarn, then they look like sharp metal objects or sharp wooden objects. If they're already in your knitting, it's a little easier to explain, oh, it's part of my project, they're my knitting needles. So that's that. I love to fly. I love to fly with my projects because it gives me something to do. It's a good focused time for me to work on a project, but you have to keep all those things in mind. It might get taken away, but at least through TSA, it's supposed to be permitted. So you too can be like Mrs. Puff. You can pretend you're in an episode of Murder, She Wrote. You can put it in a huge basket. You can be really weird about it. Preferably, if you don't want people to take it away, don't be weird about it. Play it cool. So that's that for today. As always, I appreciate you choosing to spend time with me here on the channel. I know this episode was a bit different, but every episode I post is different. Sometimes we're talking about a project. Sometimes we're talking about a hot topic going on or something that I want to share, whether it was a story, an experience, something worth telling. So things are always different here. I hope that if you're someone that likes coming back to the channel, that this was something that you enjoyed having on while you were crafting or relaxing, passing the time, who knows? So I always love hearing from you in the comments below, and you can also find me on Instagram. You can find me on Ravelry, feel free to add me there, and you can find me over on Patreon. Now, somebody asked if I would share the upcoming Patreon Zoom sessions. So if you're not familiar, I have a Patreon page for those who want to support the channel in a monetary way. Of course, I don't expect anyone to do that. I appreciate you being here on the video, watching me on YouTube. That's another great way to support. But if you're in a position to do that and you want to join me for these Zoom sessions, we craft, we talk, we laugh, we just share with each other, and I try to offer these between 2, 3, 4 times each month. So the upcoming dates are here on the screen. That's Saturday, March 29th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And then in April, I have 3 dates that I'm offering for these Zoom sessions. April 5th, 1 p.m., April 14th, 1 p.m., and then April 22nd, 6 p.m., all in Eastern Time. So if you're interested and you're in a position where you'd like to join the Patreon page and Zoom with some of us for these virtual crafting nights, then I would love to see you there. You can find the information at the end of the video and also in the description box below. So thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. I love getting to know all of you, and I'm honored that you choose to include me in your crafting circle. So happy knitting, happy crocheting, happy crafting to you. Hopefully, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.